Hi, guys. Good evening. I'm Sylviaworsham. Welcome to the Let's Get Raw and Real show, a show that was created to bring solutions to real problems plaguing humanity. I bring collaborators on board to give applicable tips on one of the 7 pillars of life. And tonight, I have the distinct privilege and honor to have not just my friend and mentor, but a fellow collaborator, J.R.Gonzales, talk to us on the power of persuasion. And tonight, I wanted to start off with a story that leads us directly into our show and our interview. And one of the things that I reached out to JR about 22 years ago when we first met at a Hispanic task force meeting for the American Heart Association, I had a corporate drama unfolding with my previous employer, Hoffman LaRoche. I was going to be facing a firing squad of sorts, 3 district managers and 2 partners that really did not like me. And I reached out to JR because at the time, JR was the chairman of the board of the Texas Association of Mexican American Chambers of Commerce. And I knew that to get to those levels, in community organizations like that one, I knew he had wisdom to impart, and I knew I could learn a great deal from him. So I called him up and I said, "Here's the situation. I really don't know what I'm doing. I think I've ruffled some feathers, and I need to be able to influence these managers into understanding what the true situation is." And he said, "Mija," because he talks like that. "Mija, I just need to remember they're going to try to trigger you and get real personal with you, and you're going to have to stay calm. So you're going to have to keep your passionate self out of this situation." And I remember just thinking, "Wow, that's going to be interesting. I'm going to have to coach and be mentored by this now. I'm going to have to really take to heart what he's telling me." And I remember having that in the back of my mind, saying, whoever loses their temper first loses the game. That was his biggest, pearl that he gave me. And I kept that in the back of my mind. And interestingly enough, I was not triggered. And the girl who was really trying to get me to get triggered was one that actually lost her temper. And we all know what happens when we lose our temper. We kind of lose the game. We share a little bit too much, more than we intended. And the managers saw what I had been seeing for months from her. So I came out of there unscathed due to his mentoring and his coaching. And so truly, truly, JR, it is my honor to have you on board because I know you're going to give my audience such enormous pearls of wisdom tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, JR.
No, Sylvia, the pleasure and honor is mine. And, till you gave that story, I'd almost forgotten about it. So, first of all, you did well, and I'm going to go ahead and send you an invoice for that now, okay? No
Sure.
no interest. But no, Sylvia, seriously, it's a pleasure being here. I was honored that you asked me as what I know about persuasion and influence. I get along, but I think the biggest advantage is I've been at it for a long time, and have learned a few things on the way, and are just more than happy to share some of those thoughts and some of those little pearls of knowledge with you and your audience here tonight and anytime. I'm always available to you.
No, thank you so much. And guys, this is how it's going to go with the Let's Get Raw and Real show. I'm going to have my question, JR. But if at any point you have a particular question that you want to answer, please feel free to use the chat available on wherever you're streaming from. We're streaming into Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. So feel free to use the chat and we will get those questions answered for you. So the very first question I'd like to ask you, JR, is kind of going off of the story we just shared. What strategies can you use to neutralize a person who doesn't like you? I'm sure you've had that experience before.
More often than I'd like to admit, yes. It's simple, Sylvia. It's one of the things I learned long ago is you're not going to be able to make everybody happy. If you're out there doing something, you're going to upset people. If you're moving forward, if you're advancing in your career, if you're getting recognition, if you have people speaking kindly about you, there are always going to be those who speak negatively. It's the 80-20 rule. And I try to live by the 80-20 rule. And that's, in this particular case, 80% of the people that you meet and know are going to like you and everything's going to be fine. But 20% of the people you know, in my case, maybe 30%, but about 20% of the people you meet, well, they don't like you. They never will. And they do things to be destructive or harmful to you. But as human beings, what we want to do is we want to spend 80% of our time appeasing or working with that 20% to try to make them happy. Why? If they don't like you, they don't like you. Move on. It's not worth your time. I also recognize that 20% of the people cause 80% of the problems. So when you look at that, I try to focus in on that 80% that do like me, or that 80% that are doing positive things, and not bringing everybody down. So it's a matter of mindset, is not take it personal and recognize that not everybody's going to like you. Now, I learned a lot. And for those who have played team sports in their lifetime, you understand. You don't need to necessarily like somebody to be on the same side. It's helpful, but not necessary. But when you have those people that are just out to get you, those frenemies, those arch enemies, nemesis, whatever you call them, they're out there. We all have them. And Sylvia, as I told you before the show, my list of enemies is short, but prestigious. And every year it gets a little bit longer. I mean, that's just the way it is. So when dealing with people, I think the best thing to do is to get to know them. If you're going to survive, if you're going to be able to survive the naysayers, know what makes them tick, but more important, know yourself. Know that you have confidence in yourself and what you're doing, and that don't let those against you or out to get you. Don't let them rattle you. And if they do rattle you, never let them see the fact that you're rattled. Once they see it, they start smelling that blood, they're going to be like sharks, just circling to get you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. We actually have a question from Keith in Australia. How can you get a win-win result in difficult situations?
Well, Keith, I hope you're doing well in the down under there. Win-win. And Keith, I'm glad you brought that up, because win-win is what I look for. Because if it's a lot of people go, it's a win-lose situation. And in a lot of cases, it is win-lose. Whether it be politics, whether it be business, whether it be sports. But overall, as human beings, if we're trying to accomplish something, I always try to find that win-win when possible. Sometimes I like to win maybe, 60-40 or 70-30, but a win is a win. The thing that people need to remember, and it's something that I learned long ago, is that your enemy one day may be your ally the next, depending on the situation. So it doesn't help to hold grudges. And depending on who you are or the different communities, I mean, in the Latino community, in the Hispanic community, we tend to just want to fight at the drop of a hat and hold grudges forever. You don't even remember what you're upset about the person about. But the win-win, you really don't. The win-win is important, because that way you both come away with something, which means it's going to keep the door open for additional collaboration, additional talking, or additional working together, whatever the circumstance. But there are times that it's not a win-win situation. It's a win or lose. But when it's a win or lose and you are fortunate enough to prevail, one of my best suggestions is do it with grace, do it with honor, be very complimentary of the opponent, and be very aware of their feelings and what they're going through for them losing out on that particular situation. Because I don't care how good you are, if you're a winner, you're going to lose one day. And when you lose, make sure that when you get on the short end of the stick, you do it in the same professionalism and the same dignity, that it's okay. Because one of the things that I keep in mind, when you win or when you lose, or you look at it that way, it's my objective is to win the war, not every little battle. So there's a lot of times I go into a situation or a campaign or an effort knowing, hey, I'm going to lose a few, and that's okay. That's okay, because the objective is not to win every battle you engage in, because if you do, you're going to deplete your time, your resources, your money. It's going to be exhausting. It's okay to let a few things go by. And sometimes, Keith, you become better at it once you lose, because it builds your character. It builds some strengths that may have not been as strong. And it also gives you an insight to your opponent or your opposition or whoever you're working with as to some of their strategies. And so you're not fooled or taken in by it again.
I love what he says. You don't have to win every battle. Yes, you don't. No, because you're going to lose them. There's no
No.
question about it. But I think we both, at least in my corporate experience, and I know Amy McFadden, who's also on the line, she had a lot of corporate experience as well. We encountered difficult personalities all the time. And you just never know when you're going to see them again. In pharmaceuticals, they rotated around a lot. They became your partners and then your managers, and you just never knew. So it's best to keep them, you know, at
Well,
not, I wouldn't say arm's length, but at least know what they're up to.
well, you don't want to go. You don't want to go picking fights. And if you do pick a fight, know what you're up against. I think the best advice I can give anybody is this. It actually is not original. It comes from The Art of War. The Art of War. If you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend that you do. It's a book of ancient Chinese strategies that apply to battle, but it's one of the best management books I've ever seen. And so, I mean, it's just an outstanding book. But in The Art of War, it specifically says, when dealing with stuff, know your enemy as well as you know yourself, and you'll never lose. So in other words, know your opposition or know your opponent or who's ever on the other side of the table. Take the time to know them. What makes them think? What makes them tick? What are they going to react to? I used to have a little file on fellow board members at different levels. I knew their name, their spouse's name, their kids, their birthdays, what the name of their darn dog was, because when trying to persuade them or influence them, it was helpful. It was helpful to go, hey, how's Fluffy doing? You know, it's like, I really didn't, well, I'm not gonna say I didn't care, but to the individual, it resonates. Oh, he remembers Fluffy. How kind. Get their attention and know your opponent, know the people you're dealing with very well as you know yourself, and you'll never lose. Because if you know them and you know yourself, you know where not to hit, you know what to avoid, and you know where the hot buttons are, and you have a pretty much you have a good idea of what'll persuade them. So that, in my book, is one of the key things: is know your audience, know who you're dealing with, find out as much information about that person as you can, and you'll be able to persuade them or influence them that much better.
I think that's amazing, amazing. What did you all think of that answer? I've seen some comments come through saying, love that, win the war, not every little battle. I mean, the learning to win. And I think you're spot on. And it applies to like sales as well, because influence is sales. One-on-one is connection, one-on-one. And to form deeper connections, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, people buy from people. I learned that people buy from people. I will, and I'm sure everybody out there, if I like a person, I'll tend to buy from them, even though I may get it cheaper someplace else or a little more convenient. If I like that individual and I want that individual to succeed, and I like the person and their company, I will tend to buy for them because you have that trust level. So it's a matter of, I always tell my folks, people buy from people. Remember that, and you're going to be just fine, because they have to like you first. And if you're out there just trying to make a sale and rake in the dollars and not do the follow-up and not hit the person level, it'll work to a certain degree, but your success ratio will be much higher when you take the time to find out about your client or your customer, what they like, what they don't like, and then be able to build from there.
The first strategy you mentioned, it kind of goes back to what our coach, John Maxwell, teaches us, is the law of the lid. We're putting a lid on our own capacity when we don't take that extra step into connecting at a deeper level with people that we're trying to influence. Once again, and that's something that we both have learned, having been coached by John himself personally. So that's I love your strategies. Any other questions before we move on to the second question, guys? I'm going to throw that out there. And if not, then the second question is, oh wait, Irene Williams, our fellow friend, JR, is asking, how do you handle people who still expect you to prove yourself even if you have tremendous experience? I love this question. Thank you, Irene.
Irene, in fact, I know somebody like that. I know several people like that. And it gets to a point where this particular person knew I was good and knew they actually hired me to do a job for them. They knew what I was capable of, but yet their mindset was such that they wanted to track hours. They were thinking of me as an hourly employee instead of somebody that could open doors and bring in the big whale for them. So as they were so accustomed to keeping timesheets on folks, when it came to me, I go, I don't want a timesheet. This is my rate. This is what I charge. This is what I'm going to do. But yet they were always questioning, well, what did you do? Did you follow up? Did you do this? At one point, you just have to go very simply, like, look, you hired me for a reason, or I'm here for a reason. Either you trust that I do the job and let's see the end results, or you don't. And if you don't trust me, then I don't need to be here. I've walked away from jobs. I've walked away from organizations or circumstances that if I'm not allowed to operate the way I know how and to be most effective, then I'm not doing the client or the customer or myself any good. It's you need to be confident enough to know if you don't like what I'm doing, let's talk about it, point out to what you don't like. Let me give you the reason of why I'm doing it, and then be able to move on. Another example is when I'm closing a deal. Let's just say Chamber of Commerce, the world of Chamber of Commerce. I'm trying to bring in a new corporate partner, and I'm coming in for the big bucks. I'm looking for that $25,000, $30,000 deal. And when I'm trying to persuade or influence a person to sign on the bottom line and go ahead, there's certain techniques I use. There's certain things I'm setting it up. I'm getting to that point. But as I'm setting up the close, if there's other people in the room who are not familiar with what I'm doing and they interject thinking I'm not asking the right questions or I'm going down the wrong trail, it just messes up the flow. So I think what's important is that know what you're doing, and if they're constantly questioning your ability, you just need to go back and say, well, maybe I'm not the right person for you. But don't blame yourself, because that questioning is an insecurity that they have, because they had to bring you in. They're paying you to be the expert, because that's something that an expertise or level that may be an expertise or a skill set that they don't have, or else they wouldn't need you there. So just hold your head up, be patient, be reasonable. And if they're coming after you and questioning you, you're going, at one point, really? Are we going to do this again? And I go, boom, let's just do it. But don't be afraid to walk away, and to be very frank and upfront with the person. Be respectful. But at one point, it's not going to be worth your time if you just get caught up in that vicious cycle, because you're going to end up stressing yourself out and being no good to anybody.
And Irene, I'm going to add to this, because this popped up a couple of patterns that to look for personalities like these. We all have patterns of behavior that are innately, they're deep within us in our unconscious mind. And one of the patterns that shows up a lot with people that question our ability is the certainty seeker pattern. The certainty seeker pattern is someone who needs certainty or security. And some of those people are at high levels in their organizations, unfortunately. They will seek that security from people that work under them. And that's a pattern that is on them. This is what J.R. was referencing. That level of insecurity is there on their own. You're dealing with a pattern. You're not dealing with a person. You're dealing with something that is affecting them. It has nothing to do with you. So just realize that. And that may be a strategy to use to take the emotion out of a situation like that can be highly triggering or highly emotional for you. It's just to realize it has nothing to do with me. It has to do with their own insecurities or beliefs of unworthiness. That could be another reason why they do that, right, JR? I mean, because that's probably Absolutely. What you were referencing, no? So yeah, Irene, I'm glad. Did that answer your question, Irene? I think it did, because you're putting thank you on the comment section. The second question I have for you, and by all means, feel free to jump in with your own comments, guys. Which lessons in influence have you learned on your journey to becoming president of the U.S. Hispanic Chambers of Commerce? Because you had such a aggressive goal there. I mean, I saw a lot of the interviews you said over, and that was a 5-year goal you had from when you were like the president of the Austin, right, Chamber of Commerce, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, all the way to U.S. Hispanic Chambers of Commerce. Yeah, that was a 5-year span, no?
Correct. From a local chamber in Austin, Texas, I was on its board of directors, became chairman of the board for 2 terms, and then president and CEO for a period of time. Then I went to TAMAC, the Texas Association of Mexican-American Chambers of Commerce, was its chairman of the board for 2 terms, and then president and CEO for a period of time. And then I moved up to the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, chairman of the board for 2 terms, and then president and CEO. And all that was in a span of 5 years. So it was a very aggressive and short period of time. And I've actually accomplished something very proudly that nobody to date has accomplished nor probably ever will. And that's going from chairman of board of a local chamber to a statewide chamber to a national chamber. And in the whole process, president and CEO of all 3 organizations, as well. Wow. So it's something that was took a lot of focus. I'm very proud of the fact. I learned an awful lot, but kind of glad to be back in Texas, not Washington, D.C. I love it. It's one of my favorite cities and places to be in the world. But I was there for 9 years and ready to come home and develop a different type of lifestyle now. But so if you don't mind, Sylvia, and my apologies, can you be more specific with the question?
Well, you probably learned lessons on that journey in influence specifically. So what were maybe 2 lessons that would be applicable to share with my audience?
I think there's a couple lessons that can be applied not only to this situation, but in many situations. Is one, because keep in mind the structure operates by boardrooms. When I walk into a boardroom or in a situation or a meeting and people see me coming, they usually don't know what I'm thinking. They don't know which side I am going to go on the issue. And I try to keep a lot of that private. I keep as much of it I can. Unless I'm involved in a campaign to get the thing through, I keep my mouth shut. I watch, I listen, I learn, and then I play the wild card. So it's kind of like everybody's watching. I'm kind of seeing the sides, how they're lining up. And it's kind of like if Gonzales goes this way, it's going to sway it. If he goes this way, it's going to sway it. So all eyes are on me. And then before long, you start not only getting the attention, but you also start wagging the dog. So I'm the tail that can wag the dog if you play it right, where everybody else is there, but you're the influencer because you have that key vote or you have that key voice. So I think one of the things is make sure your ideas and your plans are well kept secrets, depending on, and let them out to when you want them to know, when you want people to know them. Second of all, as you look at it, don't be afraid. One of my biggest successes in moving up through the ranks, Sylvia, and audience, is people would always underestimate me. My personality type is one. I'm usually pretty laid back, kind of laissez-faire type attitude. I joke around, I kid around. Hell, something inappropriate may fall out of my mouth, but I'm always thinking, I'm always watching, and I'm very careful. But when they don't take you serious, sometimes that's the best time to listen and learn. And then when I do get serious, it's like, whoa, where did that come from? But by then it's too late, because I've already garnered all the information and taking all the steps I need, because it was a strategy and a purpose of moving my way to a certain point to exude that influence or to change the situation or to get them to go in a certain direction. So actually playing dumb can be an advantage. I'm also going to go back to Art of War, that the bravest soldiers can act like cowards. If you want to accomplish, because there's a certain amount of deception, if you will, in the whole strategy, is be brave enough to let people think that you're a coward or that you're dumb or that you don't know what's going on. And if they do that, then they kind of dismiss you as a non-player or a non-threat. And then when the time is right, you pop up and it's like, where the heck did that one come from? And just surprises the heck out of all of them. Another strategy that I'll use, and Sylvia, I talked about this with you, and it's one of my favorites. And ladies and gentlemen out there again, this comes from 36 strategies, ancient Chinese writings, that when possible, kill your enemy with somebody else's sword. That's right.
Okay.
And this is a metaphor, okay? So we're not talking literally kill. Back, ancient Chinese, kill your enemy with somebody else's sword. So let's say Sylvia and I are going at it, and we just have this big to-do. And it's like, okay, I need to get rid of Sylvia. Well, instead of me getting rid of Sylvia, I employ somebody else who maybe equally doesn't like Sylvia or wants to get in good favor with me, and I go, boom, go after her. And if they prevail, and then Sylvia's looking for retaliation, or her group or her people are going, man, we're gonna have payback for this. They're looking at the other schmuck they're looking at the other person who did it, and they're looking at me, and I'm going, hey, hands, I didn't have anything to do with that. So it's like, put your ego in check, and if you can accomplish things and other people take credit, let them. What does it matter? What matters is you've accomplished your goal and you've gotten closer to what you want to do. So if you can do that, I mean, that's a big plus. And I think that the third thing that is important is, and it's the toughest thing for me to do, believe me, it's tough for me. And if you can train yourself to do it, is make your decisions. When you make decisions, try to do it without emotion. Take your personal feelings and emotions out of the equation. And when you can learn to do that, you're actually looking at things a lot differently. Now, we all have a frame of reference. We all have experiences in life. And sometimes we want to use those experiences to help our decision making. When sometimes it's better to put all those decisions, all those experiences aside, come with a clean slate, look at the facts, look at the narrative, look what's going on, and make your decision based on what you see and hear and not necessarily on what you feel. Because when you start getting your emotions involved, that's when you have a chance of going south.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, like the first story we shared is like, keep your emotions intact. Like, do not let them see your emotions, because the minute you let that happen, you've lost the game. That's it. It's over. The right coach, my friend Joyce Glass, who's in Georgia, is asking a question. When closing with prospective client, what is a good way to handle someone who wants to work with you but wants to think about it?
Work with you and think about it. Well, who's that? Joyce?
Joyce. Yeah,
Joyce. That's always a tough one. You have those people that want to think about it. I've had clients that were engineers, and if you ever worked with engineers, you show them how to do something, they want to think about it, they want to research it, they want to study it, they want to take it committee, they want to break it down, they want to reverse engineer it, they put it back together, and a month later they go, okay, we'll go with your suggestion. And all that time, you've just wasted so much time. Everything is like, that's not even it's not even relevant anymore. We need to do something else. It's with what you have to do is with clients is you have to do an assessment. Are they worth your time? I mean, every client is important, but sometimes, Joyce, and you know what I'm talking about, I'm sure, some of your smaller clients probably take up the majority of your time, or your bigger clients, aren't. You have to find that balance. Is this client worth it to me? Now, I was sharing a story with Sylvia the other day, and that some of my clients, and my technique I was using when doing consulting work and doing marketing and advertising for some of these folks is like, for a period of 4 years, I never carried a business card. People go, Jerry, you don't have a business card? I go, well, yeah, I don't carry them. Well, why not? Well, if I carry them, then people are going to call me and want me to do stuff for them. I've got my hands full. So even though it may not have been the case, I gave the perception that I was in such demand, that I was so popular, that people wanted my services, that I didn't even have to carry a business card. And then the next thing you know, they start chasing you. They're going, no, I want you. I want you to do my marketing, or I want you to be, I need to be one of your clients. I go, oh, really? All right, let me see if I can work you in, which the whole time I'm eating beans and rice because I'm broke. But keep in mind, some of it is that perception. Remember I said art of war, hey, it's that perception of what they think. So as you're looking at it, it's always try to do, or what I always try to do, is position myself from a position of not only a good position, but perception is reality for a lot of people. So try to put out there, and don't, Joyce, don't make the mistake. A lot of people go, it's an image. You're not building an image. An image is short-lived. An image can be put together overnight. What you're dealing with your reputation. Build your reputation slowly and carefully. It's not going to take much to make it crumble. But if you do that and you get the reputation and people go, well, let me think about it. Well, think all you want, but I got other people that are interested, And at that point, give them a deadline. I've actually been in a client's office where, and it was a technique that they used, and Sylvia, if I'm going to share this real quick.
Sure.
I was in the owner of this hotel was trying to get me to do business at the time. One of my businesses was a private security and investigations company, and he wanted me to take over his security and internal security, have my company do that. And knowing what I know about some of the Asian business mentality, I went in there and my price was high. I jacked up my price. So I gave the first price because I knew whatever price I give him is going to be too much. So I gave him the best price. I gave him that price. Too much. I go, okay. And then I gave him the next price. And he goes, no, not enough. I go, okay. And I go, well, this is it. That's the best I can do. I gave you my price. You said it was too much. I brought it lower. This is it. And he goes, no, it's too much. And so I just stopped and I stared at him. And I just watched. There's long silence. And who is going to break first? Because one of the methods is in this type of situation is let the other be quiet and let the other person talk. Because if the other person is talking, they're putting out more and more information. And so by you not talking, it's like, I'm going, well, how about this? And how about this? Or maybe I can do this. They're trying to get the best deal. So I just stared. And then he finally goes, so is that the best you can do? I go, yes, sir. And then he didn't say anything. I go, okay. So I grabbed my papers. I put it in my briefcase. I shut the briefcase. I go, well, sir, it was nice meeting you, and good luck with your business. And I pulled back the chair, started standing up. He goes, whoa, where are you going? Where are you going? He goes, I gave you my best price. You said it wasn't good enough. I'm leaving. No. Sit down. And so there we go again. And we negotiated the deal, and I got the deal at the price I wanted. But it was knowing what to expect going into the meeting, knowing that whatever price I give him was going to be too high, knowing he's going to pull this little silent game with me. But instead of me divulging information, I just stood there, didn't give him anything more. And then I was actually showed him that I was ready to walk out the door. And then when that happened, said, nope, we're going to stop. So guys, Joyce, guys out there, it's a matter of pick your clients, pick them carefully. Sometimes you have to take whatever to make ends meet. I've been there. I know that. But if you get a good stable of clients or people that you enjoy working with, your job and your life is going to be much easier. But at the same time, when negotiating that deal, don't be afraid to walk away.
Amazing. I know you guys probably are like thinking, wow, this is so much information, but it's awesome information. Thank you, JR. And we have a couple of questions that popped in while you were giving that explanation. One is coming from Jason Black. He actually has two questions, so I'll give you the first one. What are the keys you've learned in how best to connect and have deep, long-lasting impact with people?
Jason, that's a good question. To have that lasting impact, I think that you have to look at it at different levels. Is that lasting impact on a business level, or is it on a personal level? And it can go two different ways. And give you an example. A really good friend of mine, a dear friend, is now considered one of my best friends. Her name was Isela. Her name is Isela Triana. She's a young woman who at the time was a municipal court judge, and she decided she wanted to run for justice of the peace. And she came to my firm and said, I understand, JR, that you're the guy that I need to see, that people recommend that I hire you if I want to get elected and to be part of the campaign team. I said, well, let's talk about it, Ms. Triana. And we went through it, and she hired me. And that first election that I worked for her, we won the election. Now, after that, after Justice of the Peace, she became county court at law. She became district court. She went some other. Now she is at the Texas Court of Appeals that oversees 42 counties in Texas. And she also just was recently on the ballot for Texas Supreme Court. We became good friends that first campaign. I keep working for her, all these campaigns, but yet she doesn't pay me anymore. So that long-term relationship as one that has been beneficial for both of us, because I love getting involved in the political arena, but that became a personal relationship. So in business, or depending on what you're talking about, Jason, it's you need to do a separation of what's personal and what's business. But at the same time, it's very easy for them to cross over where your business contacts become personal friends over the years. And at the same time, sometimes your friends, will turn into business. So it's just a matter of knowing and being wary of where it lies, because it's real easy to lose a friendship over business or money. At the same time, when you're dealing with, if you keep it on a business level and looking for that long-term client because it pays the bills, just keep in mind, do what you can for them, get to know them, but don't get to a point where it gets personal. When you start going to each other's houses for dinner and become, godparents to their kids and stuff, then the lines of business and personal relationships starting to get blurred. So I hope I answered your question. It's different levels of keeping that long-term relationship. And it's just a matter of what level you want to be at and the sustainability of how long you want to go with staying in that direction or having that type of relationship with that individual.
Can I ask a question on that particular subject? And here's why. I've been able to separate the personal and business because those are my values. If it's a question of values, I said, both individuals have the value of understanding when it's business and when it's personal. Can it work out long term?
Sure. It can, if you understand the parameters.
When it's business and when it's personal. Yes? Okay.
Yep.
Because I've had several, you and I have blurred the line from time to time, where we're friends, but we collaborate to bring value to our communities, right? So you're bringing value to my community tonight, and I've brought value to the Buda area Chamber of Commerce. Like how many years ago? 6 years ago? I had just given birth to Vivian. And he's like, this one's like, can you come and do a sales presentation? I'm like, I haven't ever given a sales 101. But I'm like, I sat there and I was like, okay, I'll get it done, and I think you and I can see, because we both have the same values and we're aligned via our value system, maybe, perhaps.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, Jason, to your comment, Sylvia and I met, as she said, 22 years ago in a business setting. We got to know each other. We have a lot of the same values, a lot of the same interests. We may not, last time I actually saw you in person was 6 years ago when you came down and did that workshop. And prior to that, there had been a huge gap. But when we reconnected, it was like not a day went by since we've talked to each other. So it's just one of those things where we're kind of in sync, kind of going in the same direction. So it just makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. And I think Jason and I have the same kind of relationship too. Maybe that's why he asked. I don't know. The second question he asked is, what practical systems do you have in place to focus or refocus on the better 20% of the Pareto principle of 80-20? I guess what you referenced at the beginning.
Okay, one more time. You broke up a little bit. I couldn't hear the question.
Okay. So what practical systems do you have in place to refocus on the better 20% of the Pareto principle of 80-20? You got it?
There's really not I don't have a matrix chart, Jason. I don't have a check and balances or a little, this person, said something bad. I don't per se keep any type of hard copy records, but I do remember. And a lot of times it's going not necessarily with the gut, but going with what you think is best. I have a certain set of rules for myself, certain mantra, if you will. And to give you an example, here just recently, in fact, it was last week, a person who I did not consider a friend, a person who parted ways with me over a year ago on a very negative basis. It was just not pretty. I was saying, no, this is over. Just please, out of my life. Don't want to deal with this anymore. And pretty much stayed out of that person's life that way. Our paths crossed maybe once. Then it has made it real clear I didn't want to have anything to do with that person anymore. So they just stayed away. Then about 2 weeks ago, they came and says, hey, JR, I need a favor. Would you mind teaching a class of Robert's Rules of Order to these group of city employees because of this, this, and this? And I'm going, I go, are you charging for this? He goes, no, I'm not. No, I'm not charging for it. And this is for who? Well, it's for city staffers of the city of, because we need to do this, this, and this. I'm going, okay. So all right. So I agreed to it. Someone goes, well, why'd you agree to it? I mean, that person doesn't even like you anyway. You don't like, I mean, you left on a bad note. I go, well, if it's to help somebody else, and the fact that I know that person had to come to me with hat in hand, and it was probably very difficult for them, but at least they asked, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe one more chance that maybe that the relationship is not so broken. I don't know if it'll redeem itself, but it's kind of like, I'm going to give it one more opportunity. Because if you walk away from those, you never know what can occur, because it wasn't so much for that individual, but I just opened up an entire new market for myself of people who now know my skill sets and what I can do. And I went through, the catalyst was a person who didn't care for me, nor did I, really give them much thought. So there again, as I said earlier, if you can take the emotion out of your decision making, that was a decision I made, but I've always had I've always kind of lived by the rule that if somebody needs help and is sincere about it, and they need my skill sets to help them out or get through something, I'm going to do it, because I believe it given, because I'm very blessed, very fortunate to have had these experiences and to learn these things. And I just feel it's my responsibility to share them with as many people as possible, and hope that they don't fall into the same pitfalls as I did in life, and make their journey to success maybe a little bit easier if I can kind of guide them and give them a few little suggestions along the way.
I hope that answered your question, Jason. I'm sure it did. He's very, very thorough, isn't he? This is one of the things I most love about you, is your mind and how you process information and how you take it from idea all the way through to the end result. Final question I have for you, and of course, once again, audience members, feel free to put in the chat what questions you have of JR or myself. What applicable tips can you provide the audience on persuading someone to give us what we want? Because we do it every day, all day long. I do it with my spouse and my children.
Well, there again, what tips? I have found this to be a truism, and this is what I try to do whenever possible. Mm-hmm. I have positioned myself in organizations. I position myself in a community. I could position myself in different arenas that I'm involved with, of not to be somebody who's asking, not to be somebody who's taking, not to be somebody who is trying to influence or manipulate, but for somebody who is a resource to help everybody else. Now stop and think about that. So why would you join an organization, or why would you get involved in something that you're helping everybody else and you're asking for nothing in return? Because the old adage of it is better to give than receive, what actually happens is as you're giving, you become a source of information. You become a source of influence. You become a source of power. Because if all roads lead through you to get things done, and people are calling you all the time, hey, JR, I need this, or hey, do you know who I can get this from? Or I'm in this situation, who do you know that can help me out? Or can you do this for me? If at all possible, absolutely, happy to. And then what has happened there is that person, not saying that I'm going to hold that person's feet to the fire, go, hey, you owe me. No. The right type of person will pay you back in spades. The right type of person will remember that and refer you to somebody else. The right type of person will be there for you or have your back when you need it. And so when I'm going after something, or when it's time to say, hey, this would be pretty cool, or I'd like to do this, I don't have to go around and gather supporters, because I'm doing it at a time that I already have that support mechanism in place, and go, man, JR, if you want that, I think you'd be great at it. How can we help? Because you're always going to have people that are going to be against you. And as those people are against you, as people come after me, that 20% or more, I just, a lot of times I don't have to engage. I do not have to fight, because the people who I've helped over the years, the people that I surround myself with, will engage in battle, or they'll do the fight for me, where I don't have to, one, I don't want to say get my hands dirty, but I don't want to engage. And there's a lot of times I give people ample warning. Come at me, upset me once, I'm gonna go, okay, I got it. I see where you're coming from. You do it a second time, you do it twice, I'm gonna tell you about it and ask you not to do it again. You come after me third time, then no bars hold. I go after you. I go after you, and I go after you hard. And unfortunately, it's not my personality type, but when I take him out, I take him out at the knees. Take him out at the knees. I will do whatever's necessary for that person not to want to get up and come at me for the fourth time. But more important, it demonstrates to everybody else. It's like, man, I'm not going to mess with that one. So it's like, I'm always trying to be a nice guy, be very helpful. When you come at me, be ready. I'm going to take note. You come at me again, I'm going to warn you. You come at me for a third time, that means you have no respect, or you think you're going to take me. Take you out. Take you out, drop you like a newborn giraffe. They're the person, you deal with it, whether it be not physically, but I'm talking about, whether politically or in business or in relationships, whatever. And then after that, that person is out. And I've done that to people who later on become my best friends, or good friends. I'm not saying best friend, but unfortunately, and as I said earlier, perception is reality. If you're going to be influential, if you're going to be somebody who can drive the train or go in a direction or get what you need or want to accomplish, you have to be perceived or to be known to be a person that can get that job and get that job done. And if they don't think you're going to get the job done, they're not going to follow you. People will gravitate towards people who have a plan. People gravitate to others who have a plan, who have come from a position of strength or power or confidence. So if you can put that out there, but back it up with your deeds and your accomplishments over the years, your street creds, if you will, then you will have a following. As I am very proud of what I've accomplished over the years, and people read off my resume, or they look at, wow, you've done this, this, and this, and I'm very proud of it. But I go, at the same time, it goes, that's history. The important part is, what am I going to do next? I don't want to just live in the past and relive that old high school football game over and over and over. What are you going to do in the future? What's important?
And even in the present, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah.
The present is what sets you up for the future.
Yeah, but as I'm
planning,
I
think you forget a lot about the present, though. Come on, JR.
Yeah, but if you do it right, the current present is already my future, because I've already planned it and it's already coming here. It's just like an assembly line.
Comeback. Nice comeback. We have a question from Dallas, Texas, from Amy McFadden. Who are some persuasive leaders that you admire and respect or have learned from?
Persuasive what? Leaders?
Leaders.
Ooh, Amy, that's a good one. There is a plethora of people out there that I have learned from. As far as, I've learned from everybody. John Maxwell certified, learned a lot from that. But to be honest with you, one of the reasons I went through and became certified is I've been reading and using his material for so long. I felt like I was plagiarizing it. So I figured might as well get certified and get licensed to use it instead of using it all the time in my training anyway. But I'm a bit of a history buff, and I've learned from everybody from John Maxwell to Attila the Hun, to Abraham Lincoln, to Martin Luther King, to Genghis Khan, to even Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Cesar Chavez. I kind of look through history and I find these people who are leaders, and it's kind of dissect what makes them leaders and try to identify characteristics in them that either I want to emulate, or things that I say, hey, I see that, I can use that. Because leadership is one of those things that and even power and influence. Does the person have the power because of their position? Are they the boss? Are they a general? Are they the GM or the manager of a business where you have to listen to it because you have no choice? Or is the person have no title whatsoever, but yet people follow? That, in my book, is a true leader. When a person has absolutely no position, no official position or title, yet people follow that individual because they know that that person has a plan. They know that that person is going in the right direction, no matter how wayward or how off key it may seem. They're going to stick with them. And if you're that type of person that can garner and get supporters behind you to follow you, this without any title or without anything else, then you're truly a person who knows how to persuade and influence and lead. Everybody is a leader. Everybody. You do it every day with your kids, with your spouse. Everybody leads. It's just at what level do you want to lead at? And it's the old thing. The higher up you go, the more difficult it gets. And it's not easy. And that old adage, it's lonely at the top. It can be. It can be, because after a while you start second guessing yourself and wondering, what the heck am I doing here? But then it always comes back to the answer. If it's not me, then who's it going to be? I've been blessed with the gift of gab, the skill sets, the experience, the travel. So if this project or if this wrong needs to be righted, or if there's going to be a battle, I'm best suited. So let's go into it and hope that we prevail, because if you do it for the right reasons, even if you lose, it's okay. But just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. And the personal gain and success will come regardless. If you're good at what you do, that'll come regardless. If you, as I tell people, some people work to live. I live to work. I enjoy my job. I enjoy working with people. I enjoy doing what I do. So I put in crazy hours by some people's standards, but I'm actually having fun. They go, JR, when are you going to ever retire? I go, why? So I can volunteer and do the exact same thing for no pay. Might as well get paid doing what I enjoy doing, because to me, it's really not work.
As you were talking, there were certain things that popped in my awareness. And when you were describing to a T, servant leadership, that is the true definition of someone who has no titles, but has the leadership qualities to lead and to serve others first. And then the pay and everything else will follow you when you do that first. And that's what came to mind as you were speaking. And the other thing that came to mind was, there's another reason why I love you so much, is your value of responsibility. And that's very high in you. You've been faced with a leadership crisis or the question of who's going to take this on, you've always taken the leadership role, because one, you're comfortable in the leadership role. It's one of your biggest strengths. I also think that because your value of responsibility is so high. I'm wrong, or am I spot on?
Well, you're kind of spot on, but in some situations, I wait to see if anybody else is going to come up, because you know what? That leadership role can be tough. And
it can.
And keep in mind, there's ways to do it, guys. As you start developing your skill sets, you don't have to lead from the front. You can lead from the middle, and you can lead from behind. It's just a matter of keeping people going in the right direction and making sure that your goals are accomplished. You don't have to be out front to lead. And some of the best leaders aren't out front. They're actually making things happen in the back. People that you never see or never hear. And even though I'm in the limelight a lot of times, I'm in front of the cameras, I'm being interviewed on television or magazines, I probably spend more time making things happen behind the scenes that people don't even know who it is or what made it happen, but it came out for the greater good. Mission accomplished. I'm happy. The project was a success. But there again, take your ego out of it. There's a lot of times when you do things, you don't need recognition. Now, it's nice to have one or two people thank you for it or to be recognized. As I told someone the other night, the people who matter knows who made it happen. The rest of the world, it really doesn't matter if the job got done, because who are you doing it for? Are you doing it for, hey, look at me, look what I did? Or are you doing it for the right reasons and for everybody benefits? And then it really doesn't matter that much as to who did it. So that, and I know we're maybe about running out of time here in a little bit. There's one thing I would like to mention, Sylvia, that it's a phrase that I use and tell young people especially, or anybody. It's kind of like the work mantra that I have is kind of like, it's very simple. It's money should be a byproduct of doing what you enjoy doing. Money should be a byproduct of doing what you enjoy doing. I love Chamber of Commerce work. I love organizing events. I love being the first to do something new. And one of the reasons I love being the first, because you are the first, and second, there's no measurement stick as to who is anybody's doing it better. Yeah, people are going to do it better later, but I was the first. So I enjoy it because money should be a byproduct of doing what you enjoy doing. And that is what's kept me sane. That's what's kept me young. That's what's kept me working, because I enjoy work. I enjoy work because I don't consider it work. I consider it using my skill sets and my abilities of working and helping other people accomplish their goals. That's why I'm in Chamber of Commerce work, because constantly helping in businesses, constantly helping other people develop their leadership skills or skill sets, grow their business. As doing so, there's a huge level of satisfaction I get from being that person or that mentor or that guide or that advisor that helped them do that. And it's kind of like, it's great. Next. And let's move on to the next person, and let's change the world one person at a time if need be.
You know, and what you and I discussed the other night when we were discussing this interview that I so love, and I think it's missed by a great deal of people, especially when you deal with significance. A lot of people want to go at it alone and want to be the only standout guy. But as our mentor, John Maxwell, has stated in his very famous book, Intentional Living, one person can go far, but when you start collaborating with other like-valued individuals, much like I'm doing tonight with you, we get so much further in solving the problems that are plaguing humanity. And I think that's a wonderful aspect to your personality that I just so love, that you lead and you model that on an everyday basis with people that you work with and collaborate with and are friends with, because that's just who you are at your core. And I love that about you. And I know that most people out there will agree that together we can accomplish so much more and at a faster rate than if we were to do it by ourselves. And that's why I created the show too, is just to bring collaborators on board.
Well, Sylvia, thank you very much. You're very kind in those words, but there is another side of me, and serve me late at a restaurant and get my order incorrect, and you see a whole nother side of me that is not pretty. I
mean, that's called being hangry, JR.
No, I
get through that. You don't deal with my 6-year-old when she gets angry. It's like, I'd rather be in, I don't know, in surgery with an orthopedic surgeon yelling at me than be in front of that 6-year-old kid as she's coming at me. But any concluding comments that you'd like to give our audience before we, or any concluding questions that anybody has out there?
Any questions?
Anybody? Any questions, or did you want to say anything to wrap us up?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, once again, Sylvia, thank you for having me on your program here. I think it's wonderful. And to everybody out there, thank you for tuning in. I hope this has been beneficial. And Sylvia, please feel free to give anybody on this call my contact information. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook. I actually have a couple small podcasts, and we're going to be promoting that here after the first year to expand that and go into some of these things. But I just want you to say, guys, thank you for you being you. Thank you for taking the time to try to improve yourself and to be better, because it's a constant learning process. An example I give in some of my training is that, when you're looking at, you look at professional athletes, you look at professional musicians, you look at just about any professional. When they're not on the court or they're not in the field playing, what are they doing? They're practicing. As leaders, as business people, we're out there every day, but when we're not engaged, we don't practice. And that form of practice has to come from learning, doing it over and over and over. Don't be afraid to go back to the basics and try to learn something new every day. At 1 year for a New Year's resolution, for actually about 3 years in a row, said I'm going to read one book a month on leadership. And after 2 or 3 years of doing that, I learned quite a bit. I also learned that a lot of it's just the same information, but when you find that one pearl of wisdom that you can actually apply, it can not only make a big difference, but it can change your life. But guys, keep up the good work. Try to be the best you can. Make a difference. Change somebody's life. change the world. You can do it, because an organized minority will always outdo the unorganized majority. And another favorite of mine is a rising tide lifts all boats. So rise up and help everybody rise up along with you.
Thank you so much, J.R., for giving us your time, wisdom. It's been such an honor and a privilege to have you here on my show. And thank you, everyone that tuned in from Australia, Alaska, the continental United States, Mexico. We had pretty much an international crowd out watching us, and anybody watching us on replay. We really appreciate the time you're devoting to spend some time learning about influence. And next month, we will have someone speaking on energy, because that's a big, big pillar of life that we all kind of take for granted, but it's foundational to everything that we do. As Chief Empowerment Officer, I'm signing out. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Let's Get Raw and Real show. Have a wonderful night. Stay safe. Love y'all. Bye now.
Thank you. Good night.